Welcome back, everyone, to another broadcast of In the Trenches. Today, I sit down with Ridgely Goldsborough, who is a founder, a multiple time founder, actually, 45 companies, the author of 20 books, who's also teaching and writing about AI as well, which is very near and dear to my heart right now, and was a part of our AI Writing Summit. So we just wrapped that up. And that's actually how we connected, was through that. And just
Yep.
hearing your story, Ridgely, was super interesting. And I was like, well, I got to bring you back. I got to bring you on my podcast so we have like some more time to just dig into your backstory. So I guess I say all that to say, welcome to In the Trenches.
Well, thank you very much. I'm very excited to be here with you, Tom, and see what kind of damage we can do in just a little bit of time.
Yeah, for sure. So in your bio notes that I have 45 companies. So how does one go about starting 45 companies?
Well, first thing I love to say to people is that two or three of them were quite successful, four or five were moderately successful, and the rest were highly education, as in they failed. And when you fail, you learn a lot more than when the wins. For me, being a serial entrepreneur, just always having perhaps too much of the shiny penny syndrome. I'd see something and, oh man, let's try that. Oh, let's check that out. Ended up working on multiple continents, had a chance to speak in 35 different countries now, and really love the idea of being first at something. I find if you can be first and early in, you don't have to be that smart. When something is maturing, you really have to know the analytics and the metrics and the numbers and the execution, and all that has to be flawless to be successful. And I'm just not built that way. I'm just more like, oh, there's a void here. Somebody's going to fill it. Maybe that could be us. Let's just give it a shot. And so I ended up pioneering a number of things in different countries around the world that were interesting and sometimes failing miserably. To give you an idea, we found out that when all the .com initial things were taken off, for example, we heard about .la, as in Laos. And so my partner and I went and acquired 5,000 .la domains. So if you can imagine hotels.la, menus.la, restaurants.la, movies.la, rentals.la, da 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 da. And then the government changed and they just said, well, you just lost $450,000 because we're just going to take them back and there's nothing you can do about it. And the United States does not really protect small entrepreneurs in Laos.
Wild. That's a painful learning lesson. I don't know what you can learn about that, except that you just got to be willing to go with the punches.
No, it was one of those where I took a shot at a .com and raised a big bunch of money and it didn't work out. But it could have been $1 billion. This thing, same thing. We had every major domain .la, including .la for Louisiana. So we had sausage.la, lanyard.la, all of them, everything. And it could have been a ginormous thing if we'd had the right contacts, if the government hadn't changed, if whatever, it would have been a giant situation. One of the colleagues of mine that's in a peer-to-peer mastermind group that I have was the guy that bought business.com for $100,000, and everybody thought he was nuts till he sold it for $7 million. It wasn't so nuts anymore. So sometimes you got to be willing to roll the dice pretty hard, or at least have a thick skin to say, the upside is so huge. Let's give it a whirl, and it may not work out. And like I said, 2 or 3 successful, 4 or 5 moderately successful, and a whole bunch of them highly educational.
Yeah. Well, it's so I got a couple questions on that. It sounds like it's like a barbell strategy, if I were to describe it that way, like big wins, going for big wins, a lot of opportunities. So casting the net and then just looking for the big win. And as long as you have one big windfall, it covers, say, the loss of any of the other smaller bets you're making.
Well, for sure. And also, you just never know what you're going to like. For example, I was part of a group that orchestrated a 5-company merger. And we merged the company together with the purpose of taking them public, did a reverse shell kind of a thing, took the company public, etc. But instead of 5 companies come together, 2 partners each, now there's 10 chefs in the kitchen. And I'm going to tell you, Tom, I hated it, not disliked it. It was terrible. No freedom, always board meetings, yelling board meetings, super craziness, etc. My partner and I lasted 1 year and bought ourselves back out. Said, we're out. We don't want to do this. And I, since that time, never had more than one partner.
Yeah. Was that an example of, I've read a book called Conglomeration. Were you doing like a conglomerate? I don't know if that's the technical term.
Yeah, we were trying to roll up telecommunications stuff all together. The idea ended up working out. The company ended up surviving and thriving and doing its own thing. but I just didn't like I didn't like that culture. I didn't like the fact that we were no longer entrepreneurs. We were
Yeah.
now business people.
Yeah.
And I call myself a psychologically unemployable serial entrepreneur because I just can't imagine working for somebody else. And even when it was just reporting to a board of directors, everybody had fancy titles, right?
Yeah.
And allowances and cool cars and whatever. It was ridiculous. But I didn't like the culture at all. So we just said, nope, we're out. So that was one of those, okay, it was financially successful, but took a year and a half of my life that was not fun at all.
I mean, for some of those though, on the ones that didn't pan out, they probably took just the same amount of time or maybe less. I mean, 45 is a lot. So like, again, I don't know if we're doing a couple a year, but like what was your average time in this to know if this was going to work or not? Like, how do you evaluate that?
Well, so realistically, what would happen is there'd be multiple of them going at the same time.
Sure.
And most of the time we would found something because of an idea, bring in some people. So for instance, I was in Los Angeles and I heard about a restaurant closing. And I went to the last day of the restaurant closing to meet a guy who was selling wine. He was selling the wine collection. And the prices were so ridiculous, man. They were like $2 a bottle. Why? Because at 5 o'clock that day, whatever was left in the restaurant belonged to the new owners. So he was just literally just giving the stuff away, tremendous wines, whatever. I ended up buying 7 cases or something. And I said to the guy, I said, hey, man, how often does this happen? And he says, more often than you think. Idea, call up two of my buddies, put together a little bit of capital. This guy's name was Bob. Said, Bob, what if we back you and we're just going to buy collections when they come up in really depressed situations, and we'll have a company and then we'll resell it to wine collectors. We know a lot of them. Said, yeah, man, we'll do that. Let's do. I'll come out of retirement. I'll do this. And he's a really good guy. So we ended up buying wine collections from restaurant closings, divorces, estate sales, and bankruptcies. Those were our four. So you can imagine some divorcee in Beverly Hills really mad at her ex-husband, etc. And we'd walk in there and go down in the cellar and we'd come up and say, oh, ma'am, got some good news and some bad news. Bad news is I can tell your your ex-husband's been collecting for a really long time, right? Oh yeah, that schmuck, he was this and this and this and this and this. And unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of over the hill, not really worth much anymore. But there's still some very good things. And if you'd like, we could just take the entire collection off your hand, cut you a check for $14,000. Our truck will be here tomorrow. We'll take away. Great. Awesome. And we'd just get these amazing wines. So then what would happen? The partners would have a meeting. Oh, dude, we can't sell this. No, man, you take a case of this and I'll grab a case and you grab a case and you grab a case. And before you know it, like the dumbest investment I ever made in my life, because all we did was drink all the profits. It did not work at all, but I learned a lot about wine.
Yeah, I bet. Oh, that's super interesting. So like, again, so your modus operandi is like, you're not doing it yourself. You see an opportunity and then you're kind of putting the piece of the puzzle together. So like you're finding
Correct.
people to lead it or to be a part of the team. Like how do you
Correct.
process that? How do you like approach, I guess, the business building side of things?
Well, so I've learned over time that you can only do so much yourself. You trade your time for money, and after a while, there's just not any time left,
Yeah.
and it just doesn't work. So the leveraging of other people and other people's talents is at the very top of the list. And I always try to find, okay, who is going to be really good at this particular thing? And sometimes I made mistakes. With Bob, it was a mistake because he loved buying wine and he loved talking about wine, but he doesn't really like selling that wine all that much. And we exacerbated the problem because we would take all the best wine and take it home and drink it with our friends. Like, okay, man, by the way, the guy had a stroke and I ended up with 13,000 bottles of wine.
Mm.
Not exact, which sounds interesting, but here's how opportunities show up. I get a call from a buddy of mine who is a venture capitalist guy and a financial dude. And he says, hey, man, my client, who's a billionaire, just bought the largest apartment on Fisher Island right off Miami. He wants a wine collection that looks like he's been collecting for 15 years. Can you help me out? I go, yeah, sure, no problem, man. And I was like, "Ooh, this is going to be good, right?" So I put together this whole list, sent it down to him. I said, okay, this collection is going to look like he's been collecting for 15 years, all these verticals, all this stuff, blah, blah, be about $100,000. He pings me back in 20 minutes. Okay, fine. At which point I had the realization, Okay, I just underbid myself by an enormous amount. That was totally stupid. Let me just go back to the list and say, hey, I had a couple of tweaks. Wanted to let you know if we did this, this, and this, it'd be a little bit more money, but I think you'd be a little bit happier. How much? 130, 20 minutes, done. Okay, fine. So I managed to salvage that, what was going to be a disaster in the moment. But I find in answer to your question, it's okay, who can help with this particular thing? And usually ideas start from conversations like, hey, have you ever thought of taking that idea and doing something with it? And of course, it takes capital. And you get into certain circles where if it's a good idea and there's an element of fun to it, and especially if there's any kind of element of prestige to something, then people will take a flyer with capital because there's a secondary benefit to the actual financial reward if it works out. And I found that over time, a lot of time when I brought in people to do a venture with me, it's because they thought the venture was more fun, or the prestige of it was super cool, and therefore we're going to pull it off. And so I did a lot of those kinds of things as well.
That's a super interesting insight. So tell me a little bit about, like, does that mean with the prestige thing? I think, like, what a great concept. Like, I've not thought much about that before, because, I might be in the things that are less glamorous but make money industry, so to speak, and never done like big ventures like you're describing. But it seems like super interesting to think about it that way. Is that something that you keep in mind when you are starting a venture? Like, oh, we want it to be like in this like luxury
Well,
market, for instance?
it's just something that I know can make raising capital, if that's needed, a
Yeah,
lot easier. Like
got it.
one of the partners in the wine business was an eye surgeon. Well,
Yeah,
the guy makes $100,000 a week, right?
right.
So it's not as though he needed money for anything at all in any way. But to own a wine company, now that's cool, right? And they
Oh
say
yeah,
in the wine business, if you want to get into to the wine business, you need a large fortune to make a small one,
correct.
right? Because well, this guy had tons and tons of money, but he didn't own a wine company. Well, now he owns a wine company. Okay, cool, easy peasy. I'm in. But how
As
much do you need?
as an example, there was that just somebody you knew, a connection, or just from relationship building, kind of across time?
Well, so it was somebody that I knew, a very, very smart guy, knew him in college. And I knew that he had always wanted to have a restaurant. Like one of his things was that he wanted a restaurant. And so I thought to myself, the minute this opportunity came up, wow, if we simply invite him into the wine business, it's getting close to that restaurant situation. And he did end up opening his own restaurant in Naples, Florida. No,
Nice.
sorry, Fort Myers, so southwest Florida. He did end up opening a restaurant, and some of the wine, he was the only one that ended up selling some of the wine at a profit, because the rest of us like, nah, didn't work.
Yeah.
So anyway,
What was your biggest win?
so probably from a financial perspective, we were the first people to take supercomputers into Thailand.
Huh.
In Thailand, when we first got there, and this is 30 years ago, when we first got there, every phone number had only one phone line. So you could only dial one number and it had one phone line. There was no such thing as dial 1-800-433-0000, and there's 100 lines there. So we were the first guys to show up with machines that could take many phone calls. So we did a deal with the biggest radio station in Bangkok, because they now could do all kinds of promotions that they could never do before, because they only could ever advertise one phone number for one thing. So that it was impossible, right? And I remember we set up party lines down there, which is just people talking to each other. Super crazy. And our machines went live at 12 midnight. By 12:05, they were busied out completely. And they stayed busied out about 24 hours a day, every single day, because it was so new and so novel. We just completely smacked it out of the park. Another similar situation we did in the Philippines, but Philippines have an interesting culture. They want to test you to see if you're going to stick around. So we had a partner down there taking care of, and he said, "You're going to get tested. Just want to let you know." Well, what do you mean? Well, they're probably not going to pay you for a while. You have to keep the longevity. You got to stick around for a while, etc. And our partner was a guy whose family owned 40% of PillTel. That's like owning 40% of AT&T of the Philippines. Super wealthy. I'll tell you a funny story about him in just a second. And it was exactly right. They waited 18 months before sending us our first check that we had to fund this whole operation for 18 months. But then after that, we made an absolute fortune. And to
Hmm.
give you an idea of how crazy it was, Tony Boy, his name was, Tony says, "Hey man, you guys like the ballet?" We're like, "Sure, ballet, that sounds cool." "Okay, well, meet us over here. I'm going to take you to the ballet." And so we get there and they escort us up to this beautiful suite, and there's all this food and stuff and whatever. And we're looking down and you can see the scene, the stage. And we said, "Well, where are all the people?" And Tony says, "Well, what do you mean the people?" Well, who's coming to the ballet?" "Well, nobody's coming to the ballet. It's just for us." I'm like, "Okay." So we had a private ballet, the Philippines National Ballet, just danced just for me and
Oh
my
man,
and about five other people. It was completely ridiculous.
that's wild. It's too much pressure.
Totally. I know. I was like, really, man? Okay, so that's what it looks like in a league that I will never be a part of, but I find super interesting to visit.
Yeah. Well, it's so it seems like again, kind of coming back to some of your earlier ideas and concepts, like you're really looking for the big wins. Like it's the way you describe things. To me, it's like, okay, this guy's he plays big. Like he's thinking about like big ideas, looking for big opportunities. I guess is that something that you cultivated over time? Has it been a natural knack for you? Because it seems like I'm more my natural tendency is maybe to be look for opportunities, but also maybe play it safe, kind of, right? A little bit, maybe I play a little smaller and I bootstrap more stuff or whatever. I don't really look for I haven't done like outside investing on anything like that. Again, so is it just like, is that just a personality trait? Is that something you cultivated or what?
I guess so, man. So let me give you an example. So when AI first came out, September 22, no, sorry, November 22, right? I started hearing about it. It's like, you know what? I'm not jumping in, man. It's way too early. It's going to be clunky. It's going to be a pain. It's going to be whatever. But I belong to a couple of really high end masterminds. I'm like, I start hearing everywhere people talking about AI. So the second time I go to one of these big masterminds, now February, and half the people in the mastermind are doing stuff with AI. I said, you know what? I got to do this. I'm jumping in. And so I jumped in really hard, February last year, 2023. I then get a call from an old client who is the top consultant for the community bank industry. So small banks like Valley Bank of Commerce, Peoria Bank, little banks that you probably have some in your town, a couple of small banks that are the bank of whatever, and says, "Can you come speak at my event?" I said, "Sure. I'm doing a lot of stuff with AI. Do you think those guys would like an AI demo?" And so then I put together a demo of taking a bank that won an award, grabbing their website, creating emotional messaging, limbic messaging, rewriting the copy, demonstrating the whole thing in 12 minutes, right? Because I knew that the community banking industry was way behind on the AI thing because they're old, brick and mortar businesses that not. So I'm in this starting in February. In June, I'm doing this presentation in front of these people, having learned what I learned in just a few months. And by the end of last year, I signed the biggest contract of my life, now managing marketing for the community banking industry because of what I took in February, translated into a presentation in front of 100 bankers. And the person who was putting on the event said, "Would you like to do the marketing for this industry? It seems like you know stuff that other people don't know." And I'm sitting there thinking, if you knew how little I know compared to some of the guys in my mastermind that are way more advanced than I am, but I saw the opportunity, jumped on it, and now we have a giant contract with the community banking industry because of knowing, wait, there's a gap. Let me get there first. Let me do the presentation. Let me stand in front of these bankers. It was super crazy, Tom, because I turned around and looked out into the audience because I was working with the CEO of this one bank that had won this award, doing all this stuff on AI. And I looked at it and everybody's super bummed out. Like, oh my God, did they hate my presentation so much? They all look so angry. No, they just were picking their face up off the floor because they couldn't believe what AI could do in a situation like that. And all I was doing was like, opportunity, opening, go there, jump through, see what happens. And as a result of that, now we have a giant contract.
That's wild. Super interesting. And so you also write a lot of books too. So how do you find the time to do that? I mean, I don't think you've been using AI to write books just yet, or you maybe you just started with the most recent one.
Yep. Number 20, I wrote with
Yep.
AI. So there are, I found there are multiple ways of writing books. And the one that I found is makes it really a lot easier than others that anybody can do. Now, this is one that you're writing yourself, because obviously having a ghostwriter is probably the easiest way to do that. But the way I do it is I'll take a huge whiteboard, start having ideas, and use sticky pads, little sticky pads, and put an idea on there. Here's an idea for a chapter. Here's an idea for a chapter. Here's an idea for a testimonial. Here's an idea. Here's a sub thing. Here's a whatever. And then step back from the whiteboard and then start moving the sticky notes back and forth until a big picture begins to get created that ends up being the basis, the framework, if you will, for the book. And then it's much, much easier because you can just systematically go through it, but you can see when you take a big, huge whiteboard, you can see the whole thing. So it's not like a bunch of pages inside a computer or something that it's just hard to visualize that way. This way you're looking at it and you're like, oh yeah, that goes to there and the arc goes here and this story goes here. And we're going to use the hero's journey framework on this. So let's just tighten this up a little bit. And I'm literally moving stickies, and the big stickies are for big ideas and small stickies are for titles. And I found that's for the creative person, a much easier way to write a book. And that's what I do.
Yeah. And then did you write these yourself, or did you hire somebody to write them, or how'd you go about that process?
No, I did all that myself. I guess part of the thing that drives a lot of this is just I'm a super geek, man. I have just degrees out the yin yang. I have a master's degree in education. I have a law degree. I have a master's writing certificate from UCLA. I got I literally, my last degree that I got was 3 years ago. I went to get a degree from DePaul University on global citizenship. What is a global citizen? What does it mean to be a global citizen? Where do the boundaries stop from country to country? And I did it for no reason other than I was interested in learning about this. As I thought it would be super interesting to figure this out. So I also had forgotten how hard it is to get a master's degree. How you have to read like 100 pages a week, and that they give you assignments that are 3,000 words each and whatever. So, but I have that kind of weird personality that says if I'm going to start something, I'm going to finish it. So I ended up getting another degree. And the writing thing's just been something I've done since forever.
Yeah.
Even now, I do a lot of copywriting. I love writing copy, and I have fun with it. Of course,
Yeah.
AI is a huge tool. I still find that AI only gets you 80, 90% there. After that,
Yeah.
AI doesn't do stuff like this. Even if the copy is great, to the human being, it might look strange, like it's too thick. Like I don't want to read thick copy. I want to be able to scroll or whatever. And just having that human touch on it, okay, let's just put a paragraph break right there so it's the same copy, but it feels better. That AI can't do for you, at least not yet.
No, I'm with you. And I use it a lot. I was just using it this morning, reworking a bunch of my email sequences and stuff like that. I like copywriting as well. And then just, I don't know, today it wasn't hitting. And I was like, it's just easier for me to just write all this stuff. But there's been other days where I'm doing it. I'm like feeding it. It's like coming out with great content. So it's like, I constantly just use it to play around with and maybe rough draft some things or say, hey, give me another version of this, or how can I say this specific word? I found the most utility out of that right now. I'm waiting for whatever it's going to be, ChatGPT 5 or something like that. But whatever the next phase is where it can actually capture a little bit more of that, it feels like it's still a little bit like tone deaf, or it just doesn't have, clearly doesn't have the human element. So like you still need human editing for everything.
Yeah. I found that we've been doing a lot of teaching AI how to create prompts, because that way I'm educating AI on my own terms. Like I'm going, okay, until you rate yourself as being a 10 out of 10, I haven't given you enough information for you to give me back the feedback that I'm really looking for from you. So keep giving me suggestions and asking me questions as to what I should be doing to give you enough information that you can finally, and then when I get a 10 out of 10, I'll run the prompt. And then that content is frankly better than I can write myself.
Yeah, I love that. I found you have to use the tool to like, you use the tool, and in this case, ChatGPT, use it to create, like engage with it in such a way that it helps you create the prompt that it needs to get you the output, right? Which is a different way than other people are coming at it from. Like they're like, here's a prompt that we've written and use it. It's like it seems like you can interact with the software or the tool itself, and you can ask it what like create this thing I need so that I get the right result out of this, and you can actually ask it that and build it that way. Is that how you approach it?
100%. And if you, and for people that may not know exactly how it all works, it is 100% an iterative process.
Yeah.
So it operates on the basis of tokens, which is either small words or a piece of a word that are being iterated at unbelievable speed, trillions of bits per second, so that every piece of content that comes out of AI is original, so to speak. And that means if you have the ability to engage with the tool in that iterative manner, it's going to get better and better and better and better and better. And then you run the prompt. So to me, the way the machine works, it is designed for doing exactly what you just suggested, Tom. And it makes it, for sure your output's going to be a lot better than saying, hey, write me an email about such and such. No, no, no. Play this role, start asking me questions. When you rate yourself a 10, in terms of the prompt that we're going to create together through this process of Q&A back and forth, then we'll run the prompt, then we'll start perfecting it from there. Then your baseline is dramatically higher than it would be otherwise.
Yeah. So you're using AI as a user. You're not developing AI software, are you?
So I'm not, but my partner is.
Sure.
So
Okay.
I have a partner who's a real geek. And so I use it as a user myself.
Okay.
But my partner, we have a platform that we layer our stuff on top of OpenAI. So for members of our own mastermind, we have an AI mastermind that we run. For members of our own mastermind, we get them to, okay, if you fill out these 8 fields, this AI is going to spit out a sales page, or it's going to spit out a website, or it's going to spit out the content for an email sequence or whatever. And we'll literally go to the point of, write this in the style of Dan Kennedy, and what's your value proposition? What's your USP? What are the pain points? What are you solving? What are you doing? Etc. $8-10. Click, one click, boom, sales page done. Now, from there is where the work starts, right? Okay, it's great to be able to get a sales page in 15 minutes, but that doesn't mean it's a good sales page. Doesn't mean it's going to convert. And my favorite saying about online marketing is, in God we trust, all others bring data, right? So give me the data. Let me take a look at some information. Let's see what it's doing. And then we can start working on it from there. So I don't personally develop the software, but my partner does.
And what is that software called?
So we have a thing called the partner attraction formula, because we believe that you're always looking for partners, whether that's internal partners, team members, affiliate partners that are do joint ventures with you, clients that buy your products that become your partners in a way. So the partner attraction formula. So we have partner attraction formula brain, which is content generator. We have partner attraction formula images, which generates images, one click also. And then we have partner attraction formula copy, AI copy. And that's the one that generates sales pages, opt-in forms, emails, sequences, all that stuff.
That's awesome. So it would be safe to say you're pretty long AI right now.
For sure. I think it's the biggest thing since the internet itself. I really do. I see it as such a game changer. And when people say, oh, AI is going to take away jobs, I'm like, yeah, AI is going to take away the jobs of the people that don't use AI.
Yeah.
And you can't bury your head in the sand like an ostrich and think that everything is going to be okay when you have a development that is so stunningly ferocious. I heard something the other day that I have not been able to verify, but it struck me as being incredibly uniquely interesting. And that was that the voice recognition is so good right now already that they're not releasing it until after the United States presidential election, because they're afraid of the abuse that would happen during the political campaign because of the divisiveness between the parties and all of that, that the latest version of voice recognition, supposedly, Tom, can take 20 seconds of your voice and recreate anything. I'm like, wow, man.
I kind of feel like HeyGen's already there. That's one of the tools I've used for some of that stuff just to play with. And it's pretty darn close. So that doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Like in the specific areas where AI is very good, that seems to be one of them.
hmm Yeah, and if you think about applicability, man, for HeyGen, and then if you combine HeyGen with one of the robot producers, all of a sudden Tom Morks becomes a bot,
Yes.
Tombot, and the
Yep.
Tombot sounds exactly like Tom. And you can have, so think of the applicability for dentists, doctors, lawyers, accountants, anybody that can take their name and likeness, get that voice there, and then suddenly customer service is done by the owner of the firm or the main principal or the whatever. I mean, the stuff that's going to come really, really quickly is pretty amazing in
Yeah,
my mind.
I agree. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. And it is super interesting. I feel like it's still audio, it's very good at. The visual stuff, obviously, that's speeding up rapidly. Content production, it's like, and it's generative AI and its capacity there. I feel like that's one of the weakest, but it seems like the most opportunity too. Like it seems like that's the biggest growth potential in some ways.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who has a company, and they're doing some financial analysis stuff. I thought, well, that's interesting. But what about medical stuff? The ability to quickly diagnose something based on having way more information at your fingertips to run way more permutations to help people live longer, better lives. I mean, some of the stuff that's out there that I that are way behind beyond my mental capabilities still seems so fascinating. Like,
Yeah.
wow, where are we going to be if we think about the fact that literally 3 or 4 months ago, image production was still pretty poor.
Yeah.
Now, today, image production is you don't have to use stock photography anymore unless you want to.
Yep.
24 months. What's it going to be a year from now?
Yep.
We're almost at the point, and I know we're not there yet, where we can use AI to generate a script and then use a different AI tool to convert that script into a video and another one to lay a music bed behind it. And now it's all original. You just created the whole thing. One of the things that I do that's super fun when I'm pitching a new client potentially, and I'll do an AI demo and show them a whole bunch of stuff. And I'll say, okay, you know what? You probably on your website, would you like to have a 1 minute video to explain what you do on the front end? Oh, sure. Okay, great. So I use AI, craft a 1 minute video, comes out. Oh, the music is glowing and this and that and that. And I said, and then I'll say to him, oh, well, let's have some fun with this thing. Who's your favorite rap artist? Oh, Eminem? Cool. Rewrite this script in the form of a very funny rap song in the style of Eminem. That boom, 5 seconds, it's done. And then I'll bust out a rap. End every sales meeting with people cracking up laughing because they just busted out a rap about their stuff, their company in the voice of Eminem. Awesome.
Yep.
And it takes me nothing to do. Easy.
This is awesome. I love that. So you're working with these banks that are so new to this. Are they open to it? Have you found?
So the secret sauce that we have is that we're only playing with big fish in little ponds. So I'm not playing with Bank of America that has 5,000 locations. I'm only going with Peoria National Bank that has three. One's in Peoria North, one's in Peoria South, and one's in Peoria East, right? So therefore, they're all in that area. Because of that, because of the geographic location, our ability to do fancy SEO stuff, fancy Google profile optimization stuff, and use video to combine with that along with AI makes it that we have a niche that I don't deviate from. So if somebody says, hey, we've got a bank and they're in Manhattan, I'm like, nope, not interested. Thank you. Appreciate your call. Oh, can you help this dentist in San Francisco? Nope. But if you've got a dentist in Sausalito, yeah,
Oh, interesting. Why is that so important?
because I don't want to compete against the guy who's spending $20,000 a month on SEO with a bunch of whatever. I want the guy who's not doing anything.
Yep.
So the delta between where they
Yep.
are today and their improvement is so huge, it's
Yep.
demonstrable. And oh, by the way, it becomes almost a form of golden handcuffs. It's funny because I'm dealing with a situation where it happens very seldom, but one of our dentists decided to leave. Well, they're in a group of a bunch of others that are still with us. Well, they left only 6 weeks ago, and they went from ranking number one for dentist my town to 40 in 6 weeks. So the proof is so obvious. It becomes almost like a golden handcuff. And so, of course, I'm now letting everybody else know, hey, so glad that everything is working so well. In case you hadn't heard, such and such made the decision to do something else. And in 6 weeks, they've gone from number 1 to 40. And oh, by the way, their website traffic is down by 20%.
Yeah.
What are they going to do? Leave? I don't think so.
So your primary uses of this for these types of companies too? Is it primarily like SEO and social media, or what are the ways that you implement it and that you use it?
It's all SEO, social media, blog creation, and videos that go on blogs, because we follow very closely what does Google say they're going to value the most. And at the moment, it's content that is engaging by authority figures in that particular niche. And so how do you create content that's engaging by authority figures in a niche? Video, by far. It's more engaging. It's an authority figure in a niche, banking, dentistry, whatever, by an authority figure, the banker, the dentist, the whatever. So we're hitting all of the major categories that Google wants. And then because we do that in a local market, I can take somebody from 0 to being at the top of the search engines in 6 months.
I love that. Very cool. Well, this is super interesting, Ridgely. I know we could go on. I think you're a wealth of information, but I want to be respectful of your time, and I want you to enjoy the beach. So where can people reach out to find you, connect with you, and learn more about you?
So obviously you can search. I have one website for speaking stuff with ridgeleyspeaks.com. But if you wanted to check something out and get some fun that can really help your business, go to partnerattractionblueprint.com. And if you go to partnerattractionblueprint.com, there's a free download there that talks all about creating emotional messaging that'll help you convert more prospects into customers, absolutely no cost. And I think that's something you really enjoy.
Awesome. And I'll make sure that's linked up in the show notes. I want to encourage people to check that out, partnerattractionblueprint.com. Well, Ridgely, thank you so much for being on In the Trenches. I appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Thank you, Tom, for having me. Anytime, just let me know what else I can do to help.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.